Hello, everyone. I'm just checking that we are live and that it is up. So, how is everyone's day? I had an interesting week and I hope you have too. I don't know what has gone on here, but I'm gathering that there is a reason only on one I can see. Okay, so I'm going to fix that up. Okay, so first up on tonight's show, before we get started, I'm going to do my normal. My daughter is making a hat. Now that sounds adorable. Um, I like watching the way that she thinks. So she went to a concert this week, her very first. Um, I'm learning a lot from being a mum, and I'm thankful for every day. Okay, moving on. Okay, we're going to talk about the super changes. Exactly what's in this. What does the Australian public view this as? And New South Wales election rolling around. The political promises coming up for New South Wales election. There is a dispute over travel expenses for David Littleproud, and then we're going to end the show with some talk of US politics. The reason I want to do that is because things are really, really crazy right now. There are numerous threats to what's going on there, and I think that if we don't fundamentally discuss it, it's going to be in a much worse situation than what it is now. I'm not too articulate with the, if you will, nice words around this, but let's face it, it's not a nice discussion. So let's talk about that and more. Let's start the show. Okay, super changes. So this week we had the LNP doing fake attacks. One of them was on Jim Chalmers, stupidly trying to link houses and stuff to it. Well, there was no suggestion that Labor was after any of those things. This was purely based around super. So this disingenuous talking point came from a one Peter Dutton. Because it was a unknown question and that he wasn't prepared for it, the news hosts know what they're going to do. They know what they're going to ask, and yet they didn't think to run it by Jim before that had started. The reason that they didn't is because they'd rather hand the mic to the LNP than the ALP. The bias is clear, but let's see how fundamentally flawed their thinking is. Unlike them, where they can openly see robo-debt, which definitely costed lives. And that's not a question for debate. It definitely costed lives. So as this robo-debt Royal Commission is continuing down the road, we are seeing it in real time. We are actively seeing, which is even crazier that we're having this discussion, we are actively seeing that at the same time, they're talking about how the poor rich people might be impacted by super changes. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm going to show you how that is a laughable concept and more. So let's start off with very first time Angus Taylor made such ridiculous comments in 2013. Now, the reason that you have to have these look backs, it's because they say things and then you're like, you thought it was fine when you were in government. Let's see how fine it is now. Okay, so let's go.
But the situation we had was some people were contributing millions of dollars into super. And it's totally inappropriate that someone who's contributed millions and millions of dollars continues to get those 50.
I think there's agreement on that.
We agree on that.
But
So
there's a better
this is
way
a
of doing
fairness
it.
measure. And look, the important thing is what's it paying for? It's paying for super system, which is fairer for women, fairer for others who have been out of the workforce, fairer for low-income earners, and it's also allowing for us to pay for small business tax. But the situation we had was some people were contributing.
So that was Angus Taylor then. Now he's taken the whole other approach, and no, you shouldn't tackle things. Nothing should ever get better, because why shouldn't it? If that isn't repulsive enough, they continue. And I want to say that this is normal, that they're behaving like normal politicians, but no, this isn't normal. The way that they go about things is dishonest from the first. Okay, so next I want to show you this one. Government confirms that the superannuation changes from 2025 to 2026. So for them to even say that he broke an election promise is rubbish, considering that it doesn't come into play until next election. Disingenuous at best. See, when you got something so ridiculous that it's easy to rebut, it becomes a laughing stock. See, so no, there's no idea of breaking promises or anything like that. And if they want to go down that road, let's go with every statement that they've ever made. You want to play stupid games? Fine, I'll give you your stupid prize. That's where I'm at. I'm not indulging you Conservatives anymore. At what point have we held your hand and told you it's fine to have a difference of opinion? But here's the thing. We're not playing around in opinions anymore. We're playing with facts. And the facts are this. We're not going to entertain you. Your stupidity knows no bounds. You want to be a Conservative? Have at it. But don't try and legitimize it as some sort of magical being, like you're somehow superior for being rich by family default or some reward that you managed to obtain or some way of ripping off someone else to get there. Because let's face it, if you're doing it honestly, and I mean truly honestly, you wouldn't be a Conservative. You'd actually be a person that wants to help out poor people. Now, that's not opinion, that's fact. You would not be a Conservative if you were genuinely about helping people. Because you would be like, sure, I can get that tax break, or I can look at the poorer communities and make sure they're helped. See, even if you look at it from the 30,000 feet view, you know people on the lower end are doing it damn tough. Like, so tough that sure they can afford to pay the rent, but to put food in the cupboard is getting harder. And now it's a choice between either or. So you'd want to think long and hard about whether being a Conservative is worth it anymore. Do you really want to be that Conservatives that will keep aligning themselves with people who would kill off the poor? That's where you're at. So if you want to make this disingenuous argument around super, have at it. But remember, I will call you out, and it is dishonest. The next part I want to talk about is when Jim Chalmers shuts it all down just immediately. It is amazing to see how quick he tackled this issue. And I was amazed at how much grace they've shown in the face of a very deceptive LNP.
That it's totally inappropriate that someone who's contributed millions and millions of dollars continues to get those 15% concessions. That's what Angus Taylor said in 2016 when they increased taxes on super. If they want to vote against this change and try and prevent this change, then they can explain to people why. They're not prepared to back energy bill relief for pensioners. They're not prepared to back people fleeing domestic violence with more affordable homes. They're not prepared to back manufacturing jobs and a broader, deeper industrial base in this country. But they are prepared to go to war for the 0.5% of people with more than $3 million of superannuation in their account. That it's totally inappropriate that.
So now that we've looked at that, we can definitely say that they are again on the wrong side of history. They're not willing to back to help anyone but themselves. And here's the deal. We can pretend like they're coming from a place that is all understanding and that they know. But here's where I'm going to show you. That is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. Here is even a news outlet going, no, this looks too crazy for even us to try and cover in amazingness. See, what news anchors generally do is they find a way to make the LNP not sound so snooty and upper, out of touch kind of people. They try and make them sound like they're just a regular Joe who'll end up in the coal mines. You know, Matt Canavan spreading coal all over his face to pretend like he's the average Australian. And by and large, it works. That deception is pulled off. You know, but they will they won't ever air the fact that Bill Shorten sat at Beaconsfield, you know, during the time when that mine shaft collapsed. Stayed with the survivors and attended the man's funeral that passed away. But this they couldn't even hide. Why? Because they knew that it was so ridiculous.
It's tough out here on the streets of Double Bay this morning, Carl and Sarah. You know, the community, they are counting their pennies, they are counting the stacks of $100 bills that they have strategically placed throughout their penthouses and mansions in case of a rainy day. Because this is basically a class warfare. And let's face it, no one likes it when the rich are the targets, do they? So the poor people of Double Bay, or really I should say the mega wealthy of Double Bay, are rallying together this morning. So we took to the beautifully manicured streets of Double Bay to see how everybody's feeling.
People are very despondent. They're going to be ordering less coffee now, and they're not sure how they're going to get through their day.
Are they going to pay for those almond lattes?
They're going to have to sell some of their properties.
Are you a middle income owner?
At the moment, yeah.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Let me talk to you. No. What are you going to do? You're going to have to sell the second Mercedes?
No, not the Mercedes. It's my third boat. My daughter's favourite. It's grim, but we'll have to consider it.
There's going to be so many tough conversations had around solid marble dining room tables this morning, aren't there? I mean, you know, are they going to have to sell the second or third Mercedes, maybe even downgrade to an Audi or a VW? I mean, you know, Winters and Whistler, they're not going to pay for themselves. It's tough.
See, even when the news is like, no, sorry, LNP, not helping you dig your hole out of this one. It's a bad look. And I really, really got to call it out the way I see it. It's repugnant that we're still having this conversation around super. It's a very, very good idea. And Labor always has this stuff. And they've done the messaging so well on this. I'm impressed. I hope you are too. Strap in, because it's going to get wild as the weeks go on, and Rupert Murdoch is not done messing around and trying to make himself demonstrably more richer off the backs of everyone else. Okay, next we're going to turn to New South Wales election. Now, as you know, time is ticking, New South Wales. You do not have long to go. So as we're talking about how close the New South Wales election is, understand that promises are being made. What are the promises that you can genuinely expect any real return from? If a Conservative says it, no. But if someone in the ALP says it, you have a better chance. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. I'm saying that there is a better chance. So let's have a look at the policies that the LNP are proposing, and the two that I found, one that I found most favoured that I would like to poach. Okay. The no grounds eviction. I'm hoping ALP see eye to eye on that one. No ground evictions to be banned in New South Wales. Whether the coalition has been dragged kicking and screaming or taken measured on approach on the result of the same. The result is the same for New South Wales. Struggling renters at the end of the no-fault evictions. See, now what happens is that you've got landlords that are like, look, I just want more money. It doesn't matter how realistic they're being with it, what they're asking. And it doesn't matter if they're going to make people homeless. See, some landlords just want to see the good old cash. But to do that, they have to make it sound like they're not being greedy and they're just following the law in every way that they can humanly do it. Now, what does that mean? It means that they want a chance to be a monster and they need to be regulated to not be. I myself live in Queensland and I have experienced very dodgy tactics of landlords. Now, whether that's that's actually not fair for me to say. I have no contact with my landlord, but I do with my real estate. And that in turn creates a massive amount of fear. Each time when your lease comes up, you're thinking, oh shit, am I going to have to cut back on some real sustainable food for the kids just to keep a house over their head? Like, what is the roof worth? You know, what are we going to have to do here? We are paying way above what we should be. And it's not just me. Millions of families are experiencing this too. And if landlords aren't reined in, they're going to cause some big problems. The Perriott government on Friday matched many of Labor's earlier rental committals. See, now that's how you know it's a good policy, when Labor's like, this is our policy, and the Liberals are like, okay, we'll take it. But again, like I told you, if it's a Conservative saying it, don't expect it. If a person in the ALP says it, you're more likely to see it. The shift to reasonable grounds model for eviction comes months after the New South Wales Green introduced a motion to ban no grounds evictions during the late sitting of Parliament that neither major party supported. Asked what had changed since then, the Premier said on Friday that it was important not to rush into new measures. These changes were made in other states recently. I don't know what that noise was, but I heard it. But also across the state. We're seeing landlords move from long-term tenancy to short-term letting, like an Airbnb, which then allows them wiggle room to just boost up the rent or kick you out and get new renters. This is dodgy at best. At worst, that there should be more held tighter reins on these organisations. Look, I'm not saying that a landlord doesn't have the right to make money. I'm saying that you don't have to make so much money in the middle of an economic crisis. I'm saying don't be so goddamn greedy while the rest of us are trying to figure out if our kid can actually have snacks at school or go hungry. Because there are real questions that is coming across our tables every single day. There is a point where you're overreaching. My God, you're overreaching. You may as well have pickpocketed me to the point where I can't breathe. That's what's going on here. It's not, there are millions of families like me, and I won't stop until they understand this needs to stop. Okay, we were the really first off the mark when it comes to confronting the rental crisis. The Liberals have been very slow on admitting that it's a crisis, but we've marched a lot of Labor's commitments. They're being dragged and kicked and screaming because the New South Wales people are saying that they live in the present issue. In other words, they didn't want to do it until Labor and the Greens were like, hey, dude, you better do this. So that's where we're at. Don't expect anything off them, though. They are grifters by nature. Do not take them at their word, because their word is meaningless. Okay, another promise. Okay. Well, one that may possibly be broken. New South Wales slams brakes on high-speed rail plans after spending $100 million on studies. Exclusive. The Perrier government backs away from building Sydney-Newcastle fast rail link by itself. Okay. Perrier government has quietly abandoned its own vision and built its own dedicated fast rail line between Sydney and Newcastle, despite 4 years and roughly $100 million spent on feasibility studies, which abruptly halted work on final business case in the geotechnical drilling being planned. Confidential documents seen by the Guardian Australia revealed that New South Wales Transport Department now considers further planning and construction of a dedicated fast rail line to Newcastle to be a task for the Commonwealth, and is yet to be operational. A high-speed rail authority, which will itself restart feasibility studies when formed. In other words, they're going to throw more money at it, get another feasibility study. I would say that this is a rort. And they know it, so they're trying to push it off to the federal government now, even after they know that, which is repugnant at its core. Okay, now we're going to get to a Labor promise. Here we go, people. Labor pledges koala protection. Labor pledges to protect koala population with new national park in Sydney southwest. One of Australia's most important populations of healthy koalas would be protected by a new national park to be established in Sydney's southwest if Labor wins the New South Wales election. The party's environment spokesman, Penny Sharp, will announce on Saturday that a Labor government would transfer publicly owned lands between Glenfield and Appin to the National Park Services to establish a George River Koala National Park for endangered species. The commitment would make the Koala Park in southwest Sydney a reality within 3 years, rather than the 17 years proposed by the government underneath the major development policy for the region known as the Cumberland Plain Conservation Plan. Now, understand that New South Wales was ravaged by fire, floods, and other climate change epidemic events. And they're at catastrophe kind of levels. These things need to, it takes so long to grow a gum tree. We need to stop cutting them. Like there isn't a reason to keep slaughtering where they live. There just isn't. And I say that given the fact that there is a housing crisis, but there wouldn't be if we got rid of negative gearing and a whole bunch of other things and got a whole lot more of first homeowners, which would also free up the rental market. So at the same time, you would get new first homeowners, you would get more rental properties available, and that would drive down the cost of renting. Like, I understand there are over 1 million homes in Queensland that are not lived in a negative gear. That's, given that knowledge, it should frighten you as to why things are the way they are. The parties, the Liberals and the Nationals have promised 17 reserve years' time and only a decade before koalas are to become extinct in New South Wales. Yeah, because if the Nationals are promising it with them, it's not going to happen. But sure. Okay. It's not a promise, but Premier welcomes a Liberal Party probe into Council Hill. That's a lie. He does not welcome this probe because it involves 2 of his brothers. Yes, that's right. 2 of his brothers are involved in this probe. Take a listen to how full on this one is. New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrott has welcomed the investigation by the Liberal Party State Director into allegations of impropriety surrounding the Hillshire Council, which involves two of his brothers. See, that instantly tells you that they are not welcoming this probe. But sure, make out like they're legitimate people that want to legitimately tackle the issue. I have to adjust the camera because it's sort of in the way of other stuff. And it's, not great. Okay, the move represents a shift in Mr. Perriott's attitude towards the allegations. All right, let's stop there for a moment and understand exactly what's being put out there. He knows that publicly he's already said he's not pro the probe. He knows that they shut down Parliament way sooner than what they should have to avoid questions on the probe. Like, there is stuff here that's a million ways to Sunday dodgy. But, sure, tell us how supportive you are of the probe into your brother's dodginess. The move represents the shift. Hold on. Anyone who has done anything wrong in relation to these matters, they will have the book thrown at them. And that's exactly what I expect to occur. Mr. Perriott told 2GB. 2GB is the right-wing cesspool that will tell you anything. Of course, he's not thrilled that his brothers are being investigated. Look, I'm on the left and I wouldn't be thrilled if someone was looking into my brothers. I would be upset. You're not crazy for being upset over that. But you are a little bit crazy when you're doing things to obstruct it. You got to let things take its course. And I know powerful men have this gigantic urge to fix things, even though that they shouldn't. They should let things take place. Sometimes it's better to not try and fix it than to meddle. And I get it. Families are hard. I do sympathize with the idea, but geez. An upper house inquiry into the collusion between property developers and members of the council reported Thursday that it had been stifled by key witnesses refusing to appear to give evidence, including Charles and Jean-Claude Perriott. In other words, his brothers have openly said, "No, I don't need to report. What do I need to report to you for? My brother's the Premier." That's what I mean, this entitlement group of conservatives. They do not care. They do not care about how it looks. The only thing that they care about is that it looks like they're above the law. This isn't unusual for conservatives. This is their playpen. This is how they've always played. Do not expect them to come out with some dignity now, intact, that will say, I did nothing wrong, so sure. That's not how they're going to approach this. Mr. Perriott previously called the inquiry a stunt by the Labor Party. Of course he did. Of course he did. Because why would a conservative not be caught rorting and cheating and pork barreling sports rorting his way through the whole thing? I mean, really, you want to play rough shot at this point in time. Mr. Perriott, I might remind you, it's not a good idea, or being in a good Christian or in good spirit of what you're doing. I get it. The urge to protect family is strong. I have it too. And believe me, my ability in meddling in situations always ended out worse. Do not meddle. Both Mr. Perriott's brothers have raised concerns over the impartiality of the inquiry, which Charles Perriott calling some of the committee members partisan and ill-informed, speculative and defamatory. Because when you have done something that is definitely wrong, a good way of doing that is by attacking the institution. I point to you to one Mr. Donald J. Trump that does precisely this. It's don't look at the substance of the claims, look at the people giving the claims. No, when you're doing something like this, it definitely raises the hairs on the back of my neck. Jean-Claude Perriot told the committee that he was overseas pardon me, and would not appear, while stating it was clear that he never received a procedural fairness. Because they just get to claim that. It doesn't matter. The developer at the centre of the saga, Top Place director Jean Nassif, also declined to appear before the inquiry, which he was offered the opportunity to do via video link from overseas. Because why do they have to? That's what happens when nepotism steps in and accountability goes. It's utterly repugnant. Watch the Royal Commission RC and you'll see just how insane the whole process is. New South Wales Fair Trading Minister said on Friday that he had no sympathy for the prominent Sydney developer being barred from the building in the city. Mr Nassif complained that the Sydney Morning Herald that they had been unfairly targeted by the corrupt commissioners. Yeah, of course you get to do that. And ministers after his building licenses were cancelled and his daughter was separately charged with fraud. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. They've charged her with fraud. While these allegations are yet to sit before the courts, understand that we're past the point of just speculation with charges laid. While she's not guilty as of yet, we will see. I work very closely with the building commissioner and know the position in relation to Top Place. Mr Nassif also rose to national attention in 2019 when a viral video showed him giving his wife a yellow Lamborghini and asking Mrs Nassif, "You like?" And he was one of the key witnesses sought by New South Wales Upper House inquiry examining the development activities of Sydney Northwest, but said that he was unable to assist due to being in rural Lebanon. He has also not been accused of any wrongdoing in relation to the parliamentary investigation or the bank loan. None of it is true. Nothing I ever did was wrong, he told the Sydney Morning Herald Thursday morning. Because, of course, it's how they avoid talking about anything. Why would you think I did anything wrong? It's not like, they cancelled all my business licenses and my daughter was charged with fraud. Oh, no, it's not as if that's a thing, and saying nothing looks totally innocent. The developer now apparently in the Philippines said that he would return home to Australia when he was well enough to travel, describing himself as a very fair man. In other words, no, he's not going to. He's going to wait until the inquiry is over and then miraculously feel well enough to fly home. That's my speculation. Let's see what happens. Okay, we are going to have a conversation about David Littleproud. Seems parliamentary expenses are still key to needing examination. Why? Because I believe both parties do exert these kinds of frauds. Both parties have equally been they're not very careful of what they're claiming. So I think Labor is going to have to tackle this issue. While we are talking about the Liberals, they do have a high propensity for this, but any vision of this kind is unacceptable to me. Okay, so let's look at the parliamentary travel rules, and we're going to see if Mr. Littleproud has something he should be concerned about. Parliamentary travel rules under scrutiny after Gold Coast trip by the Nationals leader. While David Littleproud's taxpayer-funded flight falls within the parliamentary guidelines to the Gold Coast Department he settled on 3 days prior to the flight, has reignited discussion over defining MP's travel expenditure. In early February 2023, Nationals leader David Littleproud left Parliament early to travel to the Gold Coast. 3 days after, he and his spouse settled on a new apartment there. Littleproud, whose electorate of Morona, southwest Queensland, took leave shortly before Parliament had finished for the week, departing Canberra for the family commitment on Thursday, February 9. Independent Parliamentary Expense Authority Guidelines allow MPs to return anywhere in their home state from a parliamentary sitting where to be with their families. Little Prade's trip was 3 days after settling on the $1.375 million beachfront apartment in Surfers Paradise. Yeah, there really are two sets of people, aren't there? I don't begrudge the man owning a home that crazy, but I will never get the opportunity to, no matter how hard I work. There will never be $1 million that I could ever throw at a house. That gets a little bit frustrating. He told The Guardian that his return to the family in Queensland was within both spirit and intent of the IPEA rules. The member for Morona disclosed a property purchase on his register of interest and understands a business class flight was publicly funded. See, while he's got the money to go to buy properties like this, then he gets his flights paid for. And it does not suggest that the travel constituted a breach of expenditure rules. In 2017, the Health Minister and Deputy Liberal leader Susan Lee purchased a Gold Coast apartment on taxpayer-funded room, promoting a major overhaul of parliamentary expenses, despite the trip being deemed within the new rules. Despite the trip being within the rules, the new rules contain obligations to act ethically within good faith and require MPs to be personally responsible and accountable to the use of public resources, and that they must consider how the public would perceive the use of those resources. See, so they haven't cleaned anything up. They're just doing it more. And they're like, do it within ethical bounds. With the LNP, there's no ethical bounds. They're just terrible people. And terrible people doing terrible things. Okay, let's pivot slightly to the geographical moment of politics. The USA is in really big trouble, and let me give you a little snippet of where I see it going. Okay, Rupert Murdoch has testified that Fox News hosts endorsed stolen election narrative. Now, as we've regularly discussed here, Rupert Murdoch lied about the election, and there's no question that he knew that these lies were just that. There's no question that he did think that the whole thing was ridiculous. And a court has now heard in the lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems that it is precisely that. And this should bring up a criminal probe into treason, because what he did to their democracy is an act of treason. Understanding that Rupert Murdoch should be charged with messing around in democracy in the worst way. Newly released documents reveal that Rupert Murdoch, the billionaire owner of Fox News, acknowledged under oath that several Fox News hosts endorsed Donald Trump's lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. The mogul made the admission during a deposition of the $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit brought against the network by voting machine company Dominion, which also has accused Fox News and its parent company, Fox Corporation, of maligning its reputation. See, now they get to say from this, how the news hosts knew that they were actively spreading these lies. Think of it like this. You tell me a lie, and I don't know at first that it's a lie, but I suspect. Now, before I tell it to anyone else, if I'm going to go on air and say to you, while I'm here in front of you right now, would I not check? Would I not do everything I could to call that company or whoever it is that I needed to say, hey, is there any credibility to that lie? What Fox News did is that they investigated if it was a lie. They found out it was a lie. And this is because when the 2020 election happened, they had hosts that were honest, which is a rare moment, where they called Arizona for Joe Biden. This resulted in that host subsequently being fired as a result. Now, that's not all to that scandal. They were saying that any truth be taken out. So let's delve into that side of it. The mogul made the admission during a deposition. Okay, Maria Baltoromo, Lou Jobs, Sean Hannity, and Janine Pirro endorsed the false narrative promoted by Trump. I would have liked us to been stronger denouncing it. In hindsight, he told Rupert Murdoch, the New York Times reported on Monday. In a previous court filings, attorney for Dominion have argued that Fox News host ridiculed Trump's false claims of a stolen election while promoting those lies on television. While Sean Hannity pushed that the narrative on his primetime show, he allegedly wrote that Trump was acting like an insane person. Even Murdoch himself dismissed Trump's claim, describing the former president's obsession with proving the election was stolen as terrible stuff and damaging to everybody. But why didn't he stop it? Because he wanted to make money. Understand that this is the key role to anything like that. Money. Murdoch acknowledged in his deposition that he could have ordered the network not to platform Trump lawyer such as Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. Now, and then he goes on to say, I could have, but I didn't. He said, remember, Sidney Powell made she made unsubstantiated claims about Hugo Chavez, which had been in the ground at that time 7 years, making a link to Venezuela, which was false, and then creating a whole litany of lies. Okay, so let's continuing on. I mean, imagine telling people with a straight face that you think it has to do with a dead man in Venezuela with no evidence at all. And you're going to air it like that's fact. And these people are going to just buy into it hook, line, and sinker. Sure, buddy, I'm sure that that's a totally credible thing to do. Dominion's defamation case is being described as a landmark. A Harvard law professor recently told The Guardian that he'd never seen a defamation case with such overwhelming proof that the defendant admitted in writing that it was making up false information in order to increase its viewership and revenues. Now, that part's going to be important. That's why I think it's treason. When you do something like this, understand treason is a real crime, going against one's country in lieu of making a profit. That's treason. Actively trying to strip away democracy. As a result of this, several Republicans have stripped voting rights away from people around the country, despite the allegation never being true. Fox News hosts were privately critical of the members of Trump's team, including Sidney Powell, attorney who claimed that Dominion voting machines had changed votes from Trump to Joe Biden in a deposition. Hannity said the whole narrative that Sidney Powell was pushing, he did not believe it for 1 second. Still, the network continued to give coverage to the proponents of the election fraud narrative, fears that upsetting its viewers. In a conversation about the network's coverage on January 5th, 2020, a day before the rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to stop the election from being certified, Suzanne Scott, Fox News media staff, told Rupert Murdoch debated whether Fox hosts should acknowledge Trump's defeat and admit Biden won. We need to be careful about using the shows and pissing off the viewers. Scott told Murdoch, we're fucking around in semantics now. They know full well what they did, and they did it anyway. Dominion sued Fox News and parent company Fox Corporation in March 2021 and November 2021. In Delaware Superior Court, alleging that the cable TV rigged the election against Donald Trump and the Republican who lost the Democratic rival Biden. Dominion's motion of summary judgment to replete with emails and statements in which Murdoch and other Fox News executives said the claim made about Dominion on the air were false. And partly the voting machines company effort to prove the network either knew the statements aired were false or recklessly disregard for accuracy. Okay, they knew that they were lying. That's where we're at. Now, to not just know you're lying, but to do it with such gusto when you know that it's wrong is repugnant. But it's led to some really awful legislation being passed when they know none of it's true. But here's what the rise of Trump also brought. Christocrat says he's taking over the US for Jesus. I'll rid Texas of every immoral book in the library. Speaking at an event last week organized by Texas Tea Party Republican women anti-LGBTQ activists and self-described Christocrat Rick Scarborough said that he was trying to take over America for Jesus. And he's working to expunge the entire state of immoral books in the library. So now the rise of Trump has brought out a group of crazy that was once in the corners of the country, now front and center, and getting promotions and airtime for doing so. And this crazy hasn't stopped. You had evangelical pastor leaders also carrying the narrative that they saw Trump win in some sort of vision and that it was ripped off from them. It's grotesque and wrong. And they should be ashamed of it. And all their spouting politics from the pulpit is actually illegal. Not actually supposed to do that, not without paying taxes. Okay, the next one we are going to discuss. Trump and Rupert Murdoch's stoush. Trump attacks Rupert Murdoch is aiding and abetting the destruction of America. In a post to his Truth Social account, President Donald Trump took aim at Fox Corporation chairman Rupert Murdoch in its most likely response news story detailing the deposition into Dominion voting systems. Against Fox News, some of the comments were endorsing it. Murdoch said, I would have liked us to be stronger in denouncing it. In his post to Truth Social, Trump wrote that if Murdoch was honestly believes that the presidential election 2020, despite massive amounts of proof to the contrary, was not rigged or stolen, then he and his MAGA-hating globalist rhinos should get out of the news business as soon as possible because they are aiding and abetting the destruction of America in fake news. Now, I don't want to air too much of idiotic Trump tweets or truths without having a hint of truth, because we should. What he thinks is totally irrelevant to reality. But this is one moment where I want you to take stock and understand America isn't coming back from this. You can't turn on a light and then say, common sense restored, you voted for Biden. No, there are too many millions that are bought into this. It's a rabbit hole that's too deep now. And I did warn, I said, there's only so much damage you could do until it was like gone. We're at the point of gone. Last point I want to bring you on that note is a talk about guns. The reason I want to give you this is so you understand wholly and solely that Republicans' goals aren't your goals. They are after just destruction at any part of their being, as long as they get money off the NRA and other corporate groups. Take a listen to this and how quickly it is to dismantle a Republican on that. Jon Stewart completely destroyed Republican State Senator Nathan Daham. of Oklahoma on gun reform in America, each and every point that he tries to address was completely debunked by Stewart. He was made to look foolish in the end of it. Take a look.
Component of the Second Amendment. I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be
Well, it's
infringed.
also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
yeah,
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I'm not against, I don't want to ban guns, but you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit that takes it down? Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers, 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about a less than a fraction of not even 1%, of 100th of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
But if you want, okay, so let's come up with a solution. Okay, so one of the issues, a contributing factor, again, I believe it's the individual that is the problem.
So your solution to that is give them more guns.
So I'm saying that because people are the problem, we need to look at the problems that those people are facing and how do we address it.
But you've removed the ability for the state to do that.
No, because you're...
If you don't have background checks and you don't have registration and permitting, how do you know who has a problem in terms of the people who you're giving a gun to?
Do you want to talk about the background checks first, or do you want to talk about solutions first?
I want to talk about what you're doing is you're bringing chaos to order.
That's your subjective opinion, that it's bringing chaos to order.
It's not my subjective opinion. We have 50,000 gun-related deaths. That's not a subjective opinion.
Okay, so
that's dead people. Let me back up for a second.
Oh.
In every other place in your life, you want to bring order, but guns are the outlier for you. So let's start with immigration. You want registration, maybe a wall, maybe not a wall. Why do you want that?
Well, one of the reasons is because the fentanyl crisis.
Right.
I mean, okay, but...
you don't know when it's coming across. So what do you do?
But the fentanyl crisis is twice what the gun death crisis is.
Okay, so until the gun crisis gets to the fentanyl level,
not until it,
you don't want to bring order.
No, not until it. But
do you see my point?
If we're going to talk about protecting lives, that's a larger issue in America than guns is. If we're talking about individual lives of ways that they can be protected, loss of life in America, there's loss of life through fentanyl. There's loss of life through obesity. The obesity crisis in America costs.
See, now, as he's addressing this, you're realizing very quickly he's losing. He's losing at such a rate that you can't overlook it. It's amazing that they try and do this as a politician, knowing full well that it's easy to dismantle.
6 times the number of lives as guns.
Right, and
so,
you're the guy saying, you know what would help this? Ice cream.
No. So you know what would help the problem that we're facing with firearms?
What?
The fatherlessness crisis that we have in America. If you look at the statistics.
Right. Yeah, they're dying from gun deaths.
80% of school shooters either came from a broken or fatherless home.
So you would say no guns for fatherless homes?
No, that's not what I would say. I would say that fathers need to be more engaged.
Great. So let's
crime with a firearm if they don't have a father in the home.
Let's put more resources into areas that are poverty-stricken. All for it.
And into fatherlessness. And that's something that we're doing.
But why with guns are you against bringing order?
I'm not against bringing order.
You are. You're also making it less safe for cops and for people. When the police go to a domestic call, it's the most dangerous call they can go on. In your world, if they knew that there were firearms in the house, that's a safer call. Is that what you're saying?
No, because police...
Because why?
Because police treat every situation as a potential issue.
But more guns makes us safer. So why don't, when the police go to a house filled with guns, why don't they breathe a sigh of relief knowing that this Second Amendment that shall not be infringed is being exercised so fruitfully in this home?
Are you familiar with the 39-year-old woman in New Jersey?
I'm familiar with a ton of anecdotes. I'm asking you a simple question.
This is not an anecdote,
When the police
actually
go to a house...
She had a restraining order on her ex-boyfriend.
I can run through
I know, we
hundreds and hundreds of examples of women killed by their domestic partners by guns that were not taken away through the lessening of red flag laws. You're pivoting to anecdotes.
No, this is not anecdotes.
What the police say, if we had gun registration, if we were able to track purchases, they have a technology that every bullet would be stamped with an individual like a fingerprint. If we had an ATF that wasn't defunded, we would be able to enforce gun laws more effectively, and we would be able to solve gun crimes more effectively. You're against all of that.
Because the person is the threat, not the firearm, not the knife.
I get it.
The person and the individual is the one that is the concern here.
But you don't want anything that could help law enforcement.
Now, his next part is amazing. It like slowly crumples in on him, and you watch his little face go, oh shit, I'm in trouble. It's amazing to watch. It's like I watched this and I thought, holy crap, how don't we have this guy more?
Or society determine whether or not a person is a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun.
Even
the
law
registry
enforcement
would allow you to have much more effective background checks. So I don't understand why you won't just admit that you are making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all of these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff. Why is that hard? Why can't you just stand by that?
Because that's not what I'm doing. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms.
That's a different argument.
Okay, but
you may do. Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's the truth.
That is a matter of opinion, John.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due process, upon other things.
That registering is an infringement?
Yes.
Okay. Is voting a right?
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And in some places you have to have a government issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
be on the voter rolls.
Register.
Yes!
You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
No, it's not.
You believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote, since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not an infringement on them?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities are responsibilities and order. Otherwise, it's chaotic. I'll go you one further. You want to ban drag show readings to children.
To minors, yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you banning that? Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
They can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child.
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have a responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
Tell me you weren't in love with that just as much as me. Every part of me wanted to scream, no, how haven't we heard more Americans use this? What he's doing, he's fundamentally breaking it down. Like, no, we're not going to entertain the crazy. We're going to do it with facts. It is amazing that we watched that. And I think that he has something. I think that we are at a point where we can actually have an honest discussion over it. I don't even think it should be a discussion. Just regulate it, do it, and don't discuss it with the idiots that have bad faith about it. Because for every time you hear something like this, it comes from a bad faith argument. That senator, absolutely bad faith. There is nothing genuine about that. Because he's anti-drag queen story time, which kids absolutely love it. You know, kids are loving it because they like to see the dress up and the voices that they do when they do the sort of stories. I've heard about kids talking about it like it was the funnest thing that they had ever seen. And you know, they're willing to deprive kids of that and burn books and get rid of them. You know, that actually, you know, tell people history. They're fine to restrict people when it suits them. When it comes to protecting your kids at school from a gun, nah, what do I care? That's where I'm at. So next time you hear a disingenuous American run around and tell you about what they don't think should be restricted, remind them of that. Okay, so that's it for me tonight. I want to thank you for a wonderful show. I always thoroughly enjoy my time with you. Thank you for tuning in every week dutifully, those who can and those who do it live and those who do it during the week. I would like to see comments popping up on it because that does trick the algorithm into working. I want to thank everyone for tonight. Have a lovely evening. See you same time next week, 4 p.m. Have a good one. Bye.